Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Mike Lewis from Awareness. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Awareness. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's session, which is the career path of the corporate social strategist. And really excited to have Jeremiah on the line with us today to be chatting. One thing I want to let everybody know up front, the reason we took a little bit longer in the practice session than we normally do is we were experiencing some audio issues. So before you get too hung up on it, or just want to make sure that we've recognized that right now behind the scenes, WebEx is working on it to make sure we can resolve it. But as far as we know, things are sounding okay, so we are aware that that took us a little bit longer. So we appreciate your patience. Before we get going, I want to do a quick shout-out to a couple of folks on the line today. First, Randy Levy out of 52 webinars in one day. Man, wow, that's intense love for our webinars. I really appreciate it. Second is my friend John Kurtzberg. John, really appreciate you making it to today. Glad you're able to join us, and hopefully you get some stuff out of it. So thanks again for joining us today. As I mentioned to you today, we're really excited about today's topic. It's some really interesting research done by Jeremiah and the folks at the Altimeter Group. And like I said, Jeremiah is on the line with us today. We're just really excited to have him on our webinar. And before I get to the things that Jeremiah is going to be talking about, I'd like to first take care of a couple housekeeping issues. First and foremost, we want you to be part of the conversation. We want you to participate and communicate with us, ask as many questions as you'd like. And the easiest way to do that is by going onto Twitter and using the hashtag #PoundAwarenessInc on Twitter. If during the call you have any technical issues, there are a couple things you can do. Number one, we have contact from WebEx. A producer from WebEx is actually on the line with us today. So she'll be available to answer any questions that you have. You can use the Q&A button at the bottom or chat it directly to me. We'll make sure they get to it. The other thing you can do is use that help button in the upper right-hand corner of the WebEx client. That'll help resolve any issues that you have. So, again, join the conversation on Twitter, and any technical issues, the help button in the upper right is the easiest place for you to go. I'd love to say that I can resolve any technical issues that you may have, but I'm not a WebEx expert. So please reach out to WebEx going forward today. So before we get started, I want to give you a little background on Awareness. We do a lot of these sessions, and people ask us all the time, what does Awareness do and how can they help our company? Awareness we're the creators of a product called the Social Marketing Hub. What the Hub allows marketers to do is to centralize and control all their social marketing activities in one place. It's powering strategies at some of the largest brands that you've heard of, as well as a lot of mid-size enterprises. And we also work with a lot of the leading digital and interactive marketing agencies around. So just to give you a sense of the kind of things that we hear as we're talking to customers, this is definitely relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. A lot of the strategists that we talk to say things like, I'm completely overwhelmed, that social media is only a small percentage of my job, and I need more time to be effective at it. I need help proving the value. The people, the stakeholders that are involved in social media need to know that it's working. I believe it's working, but I need statistics and metrics to really show the value, and it's a lot of trouble for me to collect and aggregate that stuff. In a lot of cases, people feel like they're losing control, that there are so many channels that we're interacting with, there's so many comments, there's so many things, passwords to manage and different individuals involved, that it's very difficult for us to keep track of everything. And finally, I need to get strategic about social media. I don't just want to launch tactical programs. I want to be strategic about what it is we're doing. And as part of that, and through our customer feedback and through the interviews we had, we came up with a product called the Social Marketing Hub. It allows marketers to publish, manage, measure, and engage through all the social media channels that they're a part of. If you'd like to learn more about it, I encourage you to give me a buzz, drop me a note at the email you see there, mike.lewis@awarenessnetworks.com, or you can just get in touch with me on Twitter @BostonMike, and I'd be happy to walk you through our product and give you a sense of what it does. But just to dig a little bit under the covers for you, what it allows marketers to do is publish content out to multiple channels through one location, manage all the content that they have, as well as manage all the permissions and control all the messaging that's going out. Also gives them the ability to measure everything that's going on across the social web so they know what's effective and what's not effective as part of their overall marketing strategy, as well as engage with the individuals that are engaging with their content. So through that, the marketers that are using the Hub can gain control over what it is that they're doing, centralize their programs, evolve from tactical to strategic programs, as well as measure success and help prove the value out to their boss or anybody that's interested. If you'd like to get more details on it, we're webinar heavy today. This afternoon at 4 p.m. I'm sorry, it's the wrong date. This afternoon at 4 p.m. Our Director of Product Development, Will Eisner, is going to be conducting a demo. If you'd like to learn more, go to awarenessnetworks.com. Jump online, and Will is going to give a pretty quick product tour to give you a sense of, before you jump on, what he's going to be covering. He's going to be going into, a software demo, giving you some background on the company, as well as giving you a sense of how it can help your organization succeed in social media. So I encourage you to jump online, check out what we have going on, and take a demo of the product. So with that, I am going to, and I apologize if my audio is out there for a little bit, but do want to introduce the most important part of today's session, and that's get to Jeremiah's research. And for those of you that don't know Jeremiah, I think what's interesting, what's really interesting about Jeremiah's background is he actually ran the social media programs and implemented the social media strategy for Hitachi for a while before he became an analyst source for research. And he was there for a while and is now currently a partner with the Altimeter Group, and really excited to have him on the line. I think one of the things that we've heard is we've generated feedback about future sessions that people wanted to hear is, how does this impact my role? How does what is the role of a corporate social media strategist? What is it that I should be looking for, and how can I optimize what it is that I'm doing? So I think it's completely relevant. If you haven't read the research yet, it's a great report, and Jeremiah's going to talk about it now. So, Jeremiah, can you hear me okay?
I can. Thanks for having me, Mike, and the awareness folks. And I'm watching the tweets.
Excellent.
Okay. Shall we get into it?
Sounds good, man. It's all you. I'm just going to flip it right over to you now, and you are on.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here to present today original research that was 100% funded by the Altimeter Group, and it took us many months, and this is a combination of surveys, over 50 interviews, analysis of LinkedIn and job descriptions to really find out for the first time, what does this role actually look like? And I have a real personal interest in this as I had this role 5 years ago. So let's just start off with what's happening. The world has changed. Customers have changed. They now have megaphones. The world is continuing to turn. And many of you who are on the line are in these roles, the decision makers when it comes to social media. And you've actually started to emerge in what we call you as an open leader. And you heard this call, this desire to help connect you in order to your actual customers and the company. And you are leaders, you're pioneers in your space. Now, many of you are probably experiencing internal conflict. The culture resists change, being open, transparent, authentic. It's very challenging. This is something that everybody is struggling with in each of their companies. Yet, one of the challenges that's coming around is the amount of requests are only going to increase over time. And both requests from customers with the amount of tweets, you can see this is the volume of tweets per day. And this is even way back in January, and it's a hockey curve. And next is the amount of requests that are about to come from internally as the different business units and regions get social media religion. So in other words, your world is about to get a lot tougher. You're going to have more requests, and for some of you, this is your second or even third job. And in this research, we found that there's actually only two paths for you when it comes to your career in social media. And the first particular path is you are unable to scale, you are unable to respond to all the requests that happen, and you become very reactive, and you're constantly taking care of the requests that come from business units. If you cannot fulfill those requests from business units, they go off and build it on their own, and you might have to clean it up later. And we call this the social media help desk, where you're just simply reacting and cleaning up other people's messes. Now, for the other types of folks, and I think that everybody on this call is going to have the second path because you're here to be educated on what's going to happen, and we call this escape velocity. And this is building a scalable program that's proactive in getting ahead of the business and customer events requests so you can be successful. And this diagram really sums up this particular path. On the left-hand side, you can see, number one, you've awoken to your role. Two, you've ascended into this role. You may have this official title, or you might have this just as part of your scope of your job, or even your second or third job. You've gone through the cultural conflict. And now here's where we are today, this career decision point. Do you become reactive and head down to social media help desk on the bottom left, bottom right, or do you have a proactive program that gets ahead of business demands. No matter what the demands are coming, it's really going to matter if you're going to be proactive or reactive. So let's dive into this role. First, a definition. The corporate social strategist, the purpose of this report, and by the way, we define corporate as companies with over 1,000 employees. You are the business decision maker of the social media programs. You may or may not be participating in social media as your own voice, but the real important thing is you are doing change management. You are responsible for the roadmap. You're ultimately responsible for ROI and the spending, and you help to decide on which vendors and agencies will be used internally. So quickly, let's find out about this actual role. Who are you, important people, you change managers within companies? And we did research to actually find out what is their experience. And interestingly enough, most folks are actually pretty early on in their career as we looked at. In fact, most have only been working for 13.2 years. And this is information from LinkedIn. We took a sample of 50 people that hold this title. And most of these folks have been working at their company for 3.4 years, but they've only been doing social media for 2.7. So in many cases, they were grandfathered into this role. They saw an opportunity in their existing corporation and jumped on this really quickly. The next one, we asked you in a survey, what makes you successful in your job? And the number one we heard is, I can wear many hats. 58% of folks said that. They could select up to 3 things. That's why this adds up to be more than 100%. And then also we heard, I'm willing to take risks. And number 3, which ties to the first one, is I can rally stakeholders across the organization. This person is a program manager that spans multiple silos within the corporation, from marketing, support, product development, and beyond. So enough about the background. And by the way, all of the details are in the report. Maybe Mike and team can send out some information later, but it's also on my blog, and you can read all the details. I'm going to go through the highlights, and then I want to open up the discussion, and I want to hear from you. I want to answer questions. So let's talk about the program. So this is the business program itself, and these are very early programs. So in fact, most of the companies, they've been doing this for less than 2 years, 33%, 1 to 2 years, and under 1 year, 30%. So this is very, very early. Only a few companies, 5%, have been doing this for more than 5 years. Typically, those are the tech giants that are doing that. Next is the organization's maturity level. We posed in a survey, how mature are you? And most say they have formalized the program at 51%, and a few of them are experimental and mature. Now, that doesn't actually mean that the programs are working well. It just means that there's a team in place and a program in place. We often get the question is, where does this position sit? And right now, a majority of the time it sits in the marketing department at 41%. In some companies, we separated this question out. Corporate communications could be a separate entire department. So if it's in your company, it's all under marketing umbrella, then you would say it's 71%. But essentially, corporate communications as a subset of marketing often is 30%. This role sits in marketing for now. But don't expect that to be the case going forward. I expect to see the customer service and support at 1% to jump up significantly. I also expect to see dedicated social media teams in the future to span all of the different business units to increase that 6% rate. So it's starting right here in marketing, but I think it will expand to other areas. Next, severely underfunded budgets. Most companies are spending under $500,000. And in fact, I'm segmenting the data out to find out which industries and maturity levels are spending what. Look for those reports in the future. But the thing is about social media is if you do it right, the crowd does a lot of the work for you. So I don't actually expect that these budgets to be increasing dramatically, but compared to that of the rest of the digital spend or the entire marketing spend, typically this is less than 1% if I'm looking at other comparative numbers. It's a tiny budget, but appropriate for a nascent new media. Next is staffing. The average size of companies from 1,000 to 5,000 only have 3.1 in their team, and that's pretty small. Typically, it's a strategist, maybe a community manager, and or a developer/analytics or a sub-community manager that might be interacting with customers. We saw at larger companies, they have bigger staff, and it starts to spread into the support teams and product teams, but still ratio-wise, it was even less. So the big companies are having to do more, although they have larger staff. Many of the original tech companies that leapt into the space 3 to 5 years ago, as are listed below, have a larger set of staff, but they typically are spread throughout different departments in the company. This is a detailed graphic. I don't need to go into it right now into detail, but essentially in the report you'll see that we've broken it out by team size based on left column, which is the size of the company, and you can see it gets bigger the larger your company. And the middle one is the length of the program. How long have you been doing it? You can see the increase in staff. And then by program maturity, same thing. There's really not a lot of surprises here. The longer, the bigger, and the more mature you are, the more staff you're able to clinch. Let's talk about the problems. So we've gone through the profile. Who are these particular people, these important change management open leaders? And then number two, what does their program look like? And now let's take a look at their challenges. And this is really what we worked on in the qualitative interviews. I interviewed, I think, about 38 or 39 actual strategists that actually hold this role in Fortune 5,000 companies to ask them. And we prioritized this. And the thing that we heard over and over and over, that there are 6 major challenges. The first one, and if we were in the same room, I'd expect to see a lot of head nodding, is friction from internal culture. It really slows things down. This is changing the way we've done business. The power has shifted to the customers. You strategists are trying to help the company regain that power by participating in social, but it's not the way things have been done before. And some people in some groups, maybe it's corporate communications or legal or HR or product marketing or wherever it is, they definitely feel that this is changing their job, and so they start to resist. While there was a lot of evangelists in the past, I'm seeing definitely they're shifting to program manager type roles, but certainly there's friction across all of these things. This is a major change in how business has been done. The second one, we hear this one a lot. It's trying to measure this beast, this amorphous, disparate new media that doesn't always tie to sales. How do you track engagement and actually make that be meaningful and tie that either to revenues or customer satisfaction or reduce support costs? It's been very challenging, and especially since the APIs are changing, the data is everywhere, and social media, you actually cannot deploy web analytics right on Facebook easily or Twitter. So we're having to glue together many different types of formulas. It's very challenging to measure this beast. The third one, let me just add on to this. We polled folks to ask them, what are you using to measure? And here's what we saw, that's 66%. You could select up to 3 things there, so that's why it's over 100%. But most folks are measuring engagement data, which is like retweets, comments, fans, likes, followers, and members. But you know what? That's one of the worst things you could ever deliver to an executive. They don't care or they don't understand it, and then you spiral into discussion, and then they say, we want more fans and followers as the business objective. That's a big mistake. So I already see people are measuring the wrong way. They're using engagement data as the lead. When you look towards the bottom, the really important stuff, actual product revenue, it's only at 22% because it's so hard to tie back to the top line. Or share of voice or customer sat, it's a lot lower because it's more difficult to do. So this really proves the point from the quantitative side that ROI is a challenge because we don't have the right connective metrics. Number 3. The last time we saw something this enterprise-wide to serve an entire corporation was during the ERP phases, rolling out CRM with the large consulting firms that would be embedded with recently graduated MBAs sitting in your cubicles for 4 days a week. And that was in the late 90s, ERP, because it's changing and impacting every single department within the corporation. And now we're seeing this emerge yet again. You are taxed so thin because you're trying to serve the entire enterprise, yet your team is only around 3 people on average. Very, very challenging to make enterprise changes with such a small, limited number of staff. And we'll get to number 6, which is tied to that in a second. Number 1, this space is leaving, and this is a quote, your head spinning with the amount of changes from Facebook alone and Twitter and APIs and the number of vendors out there. Did you know there's 145 brand monitoring companies? 145. How do you actually choose? It's a real challenge. Myself as an analyst, I'm having a hard time measuring these things. People at Forrester and as well as here at Altimeter, we're trying to track this space, and it's a lot to put your head around. I think that's only going to get worse as VCs continue to inject funding into this space as the market picks up. So that'll continue to increase. This next one, we didn't get this out of the surveys, but we got this in the interviews, and these are when the conversations get a little bit more quieter. In fact, one of the quotes that we put into the report was, the social strategist, I'm just going to summarize here, is a really tough role. Not only will they get arrows in their front from customers. They also get arrows in their back from their colleagues. And this program that you're running may be perceived as a threat to those that have the communication powers. Yet, over time, and the media is approving this and all the buzz around social, everybody wants a piece of social media religion. And eventually that starts to turn into coveting, or envy, or jealousy. Now everybody wants a piece of the social program, and there might be jockeying for that program. And there might be people, if they don't get a piece of it, they're going to deploy it on their own. And the last one, I alluded to this earlier, and it's tied to the other pieces of these challenges. The number of demands are rapidly compounding. I had to end one interview, it was sort of odd. The strategist said to me, Sharma, I got to go. There's 2 people standing in front of my office right now demanding Facebook pages. If I don't deal with it, their nieces are going to do it for them. So the amount of requests are just starting to happen as everybody gets social media religion. The requests are going to compound. So let's talk about where we are. Okay, so I've gone through the background. I've gone through the responsibilities in the program and the challenges. Now let's talk about the choices. You have 2 choices to make. You're underfunded. The amount of requests are increasing. What do we do? So let's talk about the first one, which is the social media help desk. And essentially this is doing nothing. This means you are actually going to be reactive to the program. I was a little downtrodden to see from the responses in the survey that 41% of those are already headed down this path. And we pose this question. Which of the following statements describes your program? Are you reactive or proactive? And 41%, they're responding to requests as they come in. They're unable to get ahead of the deluge that is about to just hit them as an avalanche. So this tailspin actually is starting to happen right now. And the thing why this can be so dire, if you're unable to educate them in advance and teach them what the requirements are around social media, and before they come and ask you, that's the first thing. You have to spend all these conversations educating them on how it's different. No, deploying traditional ads on your Twitter or Facebook account may not be effective, and here's why. Well, yes, this is a long-term approach. If you turn on a community, you can't just do it for this campaign. There's a lot of education that has to happen, that this is a long-term effort. We've got to be ready for the tough conversations. We can't just be promoting and espousing how good our brand is only. So that's the first one, is educating them. That can take a lot of time. So if you're not doing that right now, you're going to be doing that for each business unit. The second thing is, if they come to you with requests and you're unable to fulfill it, they will and may likely just go deploy on their own. And we've already started to see this because people are frustrated with the web department, their CMS systems, or the IT department locks it down. Well, now the business units and regions have the freedom to go set up their own Facebook pages, and nothing can stop them. Even if you have the firewall turned off where you can't see those things, they could do it from home with their mobile devices. Certainly, policies and procedures can help with that, but that's only a stopgap. The real thing is to make sure is to figure out how you get ahead of those requests before they come. And the last thing is, if they go and deploy the programs because you are unable to fulfill those requests with your small team, in the long run, 6 months, 12 months, maybe they leave your job, you have to be tasked with that role of shutting those down, of sunsetting the Facebook pages, or trying to consolidate it, or dealing with angry customers on each of those different touch points. I don't want you to go down this path, the social media help desk. It's a very granular role where you will be constantly responding to requests rather than being strategic and thinking about the longer-term picture of connecting to your customers. This really is the opportunity for yourself. Okay, now here is the direction that I encourage you to head, and this is to achieve escape velocity. We're very aeronautical focused if our brand is around, flying. And escape velocity is when things are going so well with your rocket ship, per se, that gravity's not holding you down. You're able to see bigger, and you're able to look at the larger perspective because you're leading the company forward and you're not held down by the gravity of all the requests. And the way you achieve escape velocity is to be proactive with your business stakeholders, proactive with the business units. So what we found in the research is a commonality of folks that were proactive. We saw that they were formed in the formation called the hub and spoke, where there's a cross-functional team in the center of the company, and different business units come there to learn and get educated. And that group, often called the Center of Excellence, you can call it whatever you want, but that was a common naming nomenclature we heard, is responsible for education, policy, enterprise tools, sometimes measurement and brand monitoring, guiding the different business units, kind of like internal consultants, and just making sure that they can answer and let people know about all the interesting things that are happening on the brand. They're kind of like a resource area and an enablement group. Now, many other companies were formed and centralized where there's one group that's doing all of these things, and that makes sense if you're in a regulated industry, but that will not scale in the long run. You do need to move to hub and spoke if you plan to scale. That's very, very important. Move to hub and spoke, and eventually what happens is that individual spokes of business units, there start to be social strategists that emerge there, and they start to make decisions, and it starts to spread. So the very mature companies have a spirit and a model of enabling the business units around them to do social media correctly, to do social media in a safe way, to do social media around the guidelines that they've set, and to do it in a consistent way to connect with customers. Now, I'll tell you a trade secret. Here's what we heard from those that are doing it right. Here's how you form your hub and spoke model. Number one is you get governance down right. That's policies, roles, getting your legal and HR thing. That's step one. You have to do that first. And of course, you're going to need to work with executives to get that blessed. Step two is you develop the right procedures, your triage, your response plan, and actually outline in paper how that actually works. Who does what, when, and how? And also during emergencies or crises, who does what, when, and how during crises? That's the second one. And the third thing that we heard is you launch an internal education program. And that's going to consist of both getting people to have a brown bag session internally and share their findings and learnings, then also bring out external experts, analysts, speakers, other companies, or attend industry events. If you do those three programs in that order, your company will naturally form in a hub and spoke formation, even if you don't get a org chart per se blessed by your CEO. So that's a trade secret that we learned out of this particular research, and I'll be exploring that in further research. The next thing is deploying scalable social business programs. Now, let me define what that means. The scalable social business program is getting your customers or your community or even your employees to help do the work for you. So here's one downside of our actual industry. Social media does not scale for companies. You can never hire enough community managers to connect with your customers. I challenge the folks at Comcast Cares, obviously very innovative, but they can never hire enough community managers to respond to the millions of customers that are asking for help out there. If you're in the retail environment or in the hospitality space, and soon the restaurant managers are deploying their own Facebook pages, that problem continues to cascade. It can get worse and worse and worse. So social media on a one-on-one basis, having direct conversations, does not scale. So figuring out how to tap into your crowd to help you to do the work for yourself. For example, launching online communities or word-of-mouth programs or advocacy programs like Microsoft MVP or Walmart 11 Moms. That's getting your customers to do the work for you. Or take, for example, Best Buy, which enabled thousands of their own employees, the blue shirts, to actually answer questions from customers in 12 Force. That's a scalable model. Those are scalable programs. Other things to start investing in are social CRM, which is connecting the social web to your existing customer database. And I actually think the social media management systems are going to be very important to help you manage all of these particular discussions that were happening. Our host today has that particular solution. You should talk to Mike about what they have. So these are scalable social media programs. One-on-one dialogue does not scale. That's a very important message. Okay, I'm sure the tweets are coming in. Yeah, they're definitely coming in. So we're going to open it up to some questions. But let me just talk about where this role is headed. What's in path in your career? And this is really fascinating. This role is going to transcend marketing or even support, and eventually will be at all of the customer touch points. And this is what we heard in the variety of interviews. So social media is like air. It's everywhere. It's going to be, the need for a dedicated staff will diminish as everybody starts to do it within the company. You realize what I'm saying is that if you're successful, we work ourselves out of a job. The social strategist role, if you're successful, The role doesn't exist. This is what we heard from strategists themselves. In 5 years, this role doesn't exist. This will be subsumed by every part of the company. Same thing we heard from Steve Rebell at Edelman. We don't have a verbal communication strategist or an email planner now. This is going to become a way of business. Now, don't worry, friends. If you're a strategist right now doing social media, it means you're always running to the next thing anyways, because you're very early. This is like 1997 for the internet. We're 2 or 3 years in. Very, very early. So your type of persona, you'll always move to the next thing. And let me tell you, there's an opportunity. Some of you will move to the corner office. And here's why. There's a chance to think about social media as building a better customer experience. From the awareness of the brand, to consideration, to purchase, to implementation, to support, to renewal. There are very few companies that have a dedicated role dedicated to the entire customer experience. Companies are segmented by silos, departments that tend to be for each stage gate of the actual customer. This is an opportunity in the next few years for you as strategists to transcend the business unit and think about the entire customer experience. I believe that some of you over time will eventually graduate to roles in VP of Customer Experience, and a few folks will move into a Chief Customer Officer role that looks at the entire customer journey. So that's a very aspirational thing to think about as we close out the research here. So here's me. Just quickly about the research. This is open research. You can use it, share it, and spread it as much as you want. We publish it under Creative Commons. If you liked it, I really would appreciate it if you would spread it. I'd like to thank a lot of these folks who've helped with the research. And the methodology, I'll just leave it here. There's lots of folks that we talked to. And I want to pass it over to Mike, who can walk us through some of the Q&A that's coming through here. Mike, I'll pass the baton back to you.
Thanks, Jeremiah. It's the ball, I think is what they call it.
Oh, yeah,
pass the presenter ball, so I'm going to take it back. But, well, first I want to thank you very much. Before I jump to the questions, which was great, I think we have a ton of them that came in both through Twitter and through WebEx. I want to thank everybody on the line and just let you know that the slides are available. They're actually on SlideShare. We'll be sending out a link to that after. We're also going to, we recorded today's session, and we're going to make that available as well, and you'll be getting an email about that after. So for everybody that asked about slides and recording, we're doing both, and they'll be available after. If you enjoyed today's session, I apologize up front for any audio issues that you may have had. If you enjoyed today's session, go over to Facebook and like Awareness Inc. webinars, the fan page up there. We encourage you to like that. We encourage you to follow us on Twitter. Not just to show that you like today's session, but also to follow and see any of the other sessions that we have coming up. We do webinars very regularly, and would love to have you come to more as we go forward. You can visit any of our blogs at awarenessnetworks.com, and please join our Facebook fan page where we talk about social media marketing best practices, but we talk about them more generally, how organizations are adopting social media, some of the best practices that we see, and allow the community really to share their insights into everything. So it's a great page, and we encourage you to join that as well. Finally, I want to let you know we're taking off a couple of weeks for the holidays. We may have a surprise coming up in the next couple of weeks, but for now, the next scheduled session is with my good friend Joe Pulizzi, who's going to be talking about content marketing strategies. He actually put out a book recently. If you hadn't had a chance to read it, I am going to pitch it because it was a good one. It's called Get Content, Get Customers, Turning Prospects into Buyers with Content Marketing. It's a great session. I'm really excited to have you go on. Check out awarenessnetworks.com soon for more information on it. It'll be getting updated very shortly. So with that, I'm going to go to questions with Jeremiah, and Jeremiah, the research was all great, and I actually had a chance to read the study over the weekend. One of the things that came up that a lot of people have asked about is that most of the research that you conducted was with bigger brands, as it makes sense to define what a corporate social media strategist is in the beginning. And this might just be a gut feel on your part, but how relevant is this, and how does it apply to mid-market and even smaller companies that are starting to get involved in social media?
Right. They're definitely doing it as well. In fact, oftentimes the smaller the company, the more interest and opportunity they see in using these tools because they may have less resources. But this study was focused on companies with over 1,000 employees. And if it's 1,000, sometimes that could even be considered mid-size. So it really depends on how you categorize. But it's happening across all over the board. There's no doubt about that. Now, regarding resources, clearly the budget and the amount of people, it would decrease. So a medium-sized company, this might be somebody's half-time job, not even a full-time role, or even 3 people, as we saw from corporations.
Right. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And one of the things that a couple of people ask this question in different ways, so I'm going to apologize up front for trying to consolidate multiple questions into one, but I think it's relevant. It's really about creating teams or internal agencies inside that are made up of multiple disciplines to get to really, to manage all the social activity social media activity for an organization. Have you seen a lot of that, and do you recommend organizations taking that approach?
So what do you mean by team?
So getting together people of different groups, you mentioned that they were going to be, that's actually impacted other parts of the organization.
Yeah, this is important. This is an important tactic to deploy internally, is to have a cross-functional team. And not only is it important because you need to have different skill sets there, but it's important to get buy-in from the rest of the company. So typically what I see is, in the very, very large companies, they might have an executive steering committee for social media that sets the policy governance and just make sure the CEO doesn't pull up their hair when they see an angry blog post. But more importantly, there's often a working group, Mike, that is responsible for this across the company. And this tends to be a cross-functional group. There's often somebody from support. There's often somebody from corporate comm. There's sometimes somebody from legal that comes in once a quarter or twice a quarter. And there typically tends to be a distribution list on email or an online community which they share best practices and they talk to each other.
Yeah. Is that the best way you recommend getting buy-in? Because that's another question we have from a lot of people is they're kind of struggling with, they got the social media function in a lot of cases, and some of the questions that we got, people are saying it's only a percentage of my job. How do I increase buy-in, from the executive level to make sure that they know that
that's a different thing.
Working?
So buy-in from your peers and other business units, so having a COE will definitely help. But from the executive level, that's much, much harder to do. So what I recommend to clients is to use data to show how customers have actually changed their behavior, and that should show the increase of adoption of social media. And by the way, don't use too much engagement data. Just say this is the trend. It's happening. The way people communicate is changing. And the second thing is to bring up trust data, showing how customers trust each other more than anybody else. Edelman has a lot of data. Forrester, eMarketer, Marketing Props. You can find that out there. And when they put that together in their own mind, see, oh, this is happening, and they trust each other more than us, there's a shift. And once they make that mental shift by seeing the two data elements together, they're more likely to try to understand how to be part of that because they're going to see that it's disruptive. So,
absolutely. And how long does? Yeah, no, that makes sense. And how long? I mean, because some of the folks online are just starting out, and one of the things they're going to ask is how long does it take to accumulate that data, or is it data that you actually present about things that you've seen, or is it just as simple as going to some of the stuff that like
the data already exists. Yeah, the data definitely exists out there. It's called secondary research. And you'll find adoption numbers all out there. I house it on my blog. If you just search for social networking stats and use my name, you'll find that list. And Edelman Trust Barometer is probably a really good source to go for that trust data. You can always ask your agency folks. Typically, they've been collecting this because they've been trying to make the business case to go here for some time. Not all the agencies are with it yet, but often they might have some of that data as well.
Excellent. No, that's great. Well, a couple of people on the line, I kind of mentioned this, are not just a couple, a few people actually, are saying that they're really in the early stages of this role, that they're really at the very beginning, and they want to make sure that everything that they're doing, they get off on the right foot as a social strategist. And I'm wondering if you could give one or two tips on the right things they can do right out of the gate to make sure that they start things off on the right foot.
Yes. That's a great question, Mike. The first thing you should do is not focus on your goal is engagement. So more fans and followers is not a business goal. A business goal is improving customer satisfaction, increasing word of mouth about your product, improving sentiment about your product, or increasing the amount of people coming to a transaction point, whether it be downloading a white paper in B2B or increasing sales. So when you approach social media, focus on business goals first. Put the tools and technologies second. That's where a lot of folks get tripped up. Then they take that plan, this plan focused around more fans and followers to the executives, and then they get stonewalled. But if you speak the business language that executives speak, whatever your corporate mission is, whether it's we need to improve our brand or increase sales or decrease support or innovate, if you align your social strategy programs around your executive vision, you're more likely to succeed. Hey boss, great ideas. We love where you're heading with this. Here's how I'm going to add to your mission.
Absolutely. And so one of the questions that came in is, and you have to be specific around the tools, but people, I think in this role, are obviously looking for ways that they can optimize and automate a lot of the things that they're doing. Are there any types of tools, or at least categories, and where are people spending the most money right now, and is that changing?
Yeah, I have that data. That's coming out on the report in December 9th. Most of the money right now is being spent on education and training internally because people aren't sure about these things. Secondly, we're definitely seeing an uptick with your space. Traditionally community management programs and agencies, and we're starting to see an uptick in social media management systems and monitoring. Here's a sneak preview of what's coming soon. The average spend for the average corporation is just right under $900,000 in social media for these companies that we talk to. That's an average.
Wow. And again, those are the companies that are greater than 1,000 employees. Is that fair?
Greater than 1,000 employees, right?
Okay, excellent. Wow, that's higher, I think, than a lot of people on the phone would have expected.
Well, I think we're taking into account soft costs, your staffing, as well as your agency as well, which may not hit the bottom line in your program all the time.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. So, one of the questions that just came in actually is about reactive versus proactive communications, and it's the specific question. I'll just read it to you. Is do you find certain organizational models lend themselves to being more reactive versus proactive in social media, and how do you recommend people approach that?
Yeah, companies under fire typically will be reactive. If anybody that has poor customer service or has been around that. But quickly, let's take a look at Comcast and Dell. Both of them are known for having struggles with their customers and customer support. But they were able to make their programs proactive now. They were able to get ahead of the request because they went through that churn so many years ago. Granted, not everything may be perfect now, but at least their programs are set in place and they're proactive. So it's really an opportunity if you're under fire to really grow this program.
Okay. Another question that came in is what role typically is a social strategist in before they become a social strategist? Is it usually coming out of the marketing department?
They have a background. This is from the data, from marketing and digital communications, often from the web. Many of these folks were early web pioneers 10 years ago. They've been in this for 13 years in their career. And we looked at all the background that they had and tallied it up. So they come from marketing, they come from web, they come from the business side. Of the folks that we looked at, all of them had at least a bachelor's degree, and most of them come from communications or marketing degrees. It doesn't mean that's a requirement, but that's what we're seeing as a trend right now. Now, over time, Mike, I think that we'll see folks come out of the support organization that lead their own social strategy as the next phase, and then maybe out of the product side.
Okay. So Louis has an interesting question, and is that, as you mentioned, that one of the big challenges for any strategist, and you said this earlier, is around the ROI measure. How can you measure, or how can you justify the work of a social strategist beyond just engagement? And I think what he's trying to say is that what other specific metrics, I know you talked about this a little bit, but what other specific metrics should they be looking at to help include that ROI?
I didn't bring that framework today, but let's imagine that there's a pyramid. And this pyramid has three particular levels. The very bottom level is for the community managers. That's the baseline one, and there's a lot of data there. And that's the engagement data. Okay? And that's the type of information that they need. Fans, followers, likes, comment, sentiment. The second level up is for the business units and the social strategists. And this is what we call social media analytics. And social media analytics are formulas that are comprised of engagement data that help to tell a story of how it's impacting the business. And those particular formulas typically look like share of voice, customer sentiment, customer satisfaction in social, see what another one be, how fast something was resolved. And you can create those formulas based upon the engagement data, putting it together. So that's social media analytics. You can Google that and find my paper on that topic. Now, at the very top of the pyramid, Mike, is what we call business metrics. And really, there's only two, and this is for the executives. It's increased revenue or reduced costs. There's only really two. I mean, customer sat will help either one of those, right? Or sat, but there's only really two. So it's really important you deliver the right metrics to the right role And you, unfortunately, because it's so complicated, you do have to create a lot of the formulas yourself, and that's the challenge. So strategists have to learn how to put these formulas together for their monthly or weekly or quarterly dashboards. Hope that helps.
Yeah, no, it seems like it does. We got to thank you very much back from. So I think that was a good one. We got kind of a tactical one, but I'm going to ask you because I think there are some tactical questions that came in, and specifically most of them were around Facebook. One is there any methods that you've seen work best in helping a company build their Facebook likes for a company page?
Facebook likes?
Yeah. I know it's very tactical. What's that, sorry?
You mean,
so how do you get it? Have you seen any tactics that have been particularly effective, or any campaigns that have been effective at helping companies increase the amount of likes that they get to their Facebook page?
Oh, okay. So getting more people to opt in and become...
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. If you have an integrated marketing program, Facebook and whatever you use, it's not supposed to be in a silo. It works better when these things are connected. So when you have an integrated digital approach across all of these things, you might have an advertising blitz that triggers discussion on a microsite that starts to connect to a social network. Or maybe you have a TV advertisement. Look, if you look at most of the TV advertisements now, many of them are pointing to facebook.com/brand, your company. So that can trigger these things. So what I'm suggesting is using an integrated approach will help you to get more people to become fans to your particular page. The second thing is, whatever you do in Facebook, you want to create what is called a viral loop. And a viral loop encourages those that are interacting with your brand, that are fans, to invite and attract their friends to participate, whether it be a sweepstakes, a contest, or sharing, or upload your own story or video, encouraging them to participate and tell their friends, rather than you just spewing out marketing content. So that's how you get people to provide more content. And the last thing, Mike, is be interesting and have an interesting product. I know it's kind of a giveaway, but a no-brainer, but that's the truth.
One last question here that just came in is, do you know of any, and this is more of a kind of a broad question, but it's coming from Dean, who I think is just starting out, and wants to know if there are any courses that people can take that would benefit someone just really at the start of their strategist career. Other than just downloading all your data.
I have a lot. There's a lot of this already on the site. There's a lot of stuff out there. But there's a lot of communities out there. Marketing Profs is great. WOMA, where I'm going to tonight. Also Social Media Business Council. If you're in the SMB space, Marketing Profs also caters to that space. eMarketer. There's a lot of communities that provide education out there that can really help you with those things. Secondly, you should attend business-focused social media conferences. And let me put an emphasis on that. There's a lot of conferences that have appeared just for tools like Twitter. Over time, that'll probably go away. Instead of going to a conference that's focused on business goals first and the technology second, you'll get more out of that.
That's a great point. Actually, the Gas Pedal group does a great job.
They do a good job. That's SBC.
Yep, they do a really good job at it. Well, a great question just came in. How do you balance the needs of your customers through social channels with the needs or the vision that an executive might paint? And some of those might be different, right? I mean, the customers maybe ask for one thing, and executives sometimes go to conferences and hear something about a company that's done something really cool on Facebook and want to do that, but it might not align with their goals. Do you have any recommendations on how people can balance that?
So here's the opportunity to get ahead of your executives who may not be as steeped into social media as you are. This is by you providing regular education to them and approaching this with business objectives first. So going to them and saying, we are going to increase customer support and all the things around this with this business focus here. And here's how we're going to tie it back to the business. So that's really part of this being proactive thing rather than waiting for that Friday afternoon email. We need a Facebook strategy now by Monday from executives, which I actually have heard about from executives saying this because they saw it on, in the back of a plane in a magazine, how important it is. So this really is about being proactive with your executives. Again, it goes back to that earlier conversation, Mike, about being business-focused first.
Absolutely. Laying those goals out first, making sure it aligns with what your objectives are, and that'll make it align with what the vision is from the executives because it aligns with the overall strategy.
It is. And also, if you start with how your customers are already using social media, which we call social graphics, you can show to your executive that we're going to engage them in how they already are, versus saying we need a MySpace strategy. Maybe your customers aren't there, or we need a Twitter strategy. It's quite possible your customers are not at Twitter. There's only a small segment of the population that is. So if you lead with data, you have the control as the driving strategist.
Absolutely. Well, Jeremiah, we're running right up against the clock. We have a few other questions that we didn't have the opportunity to get to. But what I'll do is send them over, and to those folks that aren't there, we'll try to get to them and respond to you directly. But Jeremiah, I just want to say thanks. It was great having you on. The session was terrific. If you haven't read the research yet and you're on the line, please go download it. It's a great report, and I think it actually gets into a lot of the stuff that Jeremiah talked about today in even more detail and has the data right in front of you. So, Jeremiah, I can't thank you enough. It was great having you on. I appreciate your time.
Great dialogue. I'm looking at all the tweets, and thank you, Mike, for facilitating this.
Yeah, no worries, man. I appreciate it, and thanks again. And thanks to everybody on the line. Don't forget, we'll be back in January with Joe Pulizzi, and hopefully you can make it to that one too. So thanks everybody for coming, Jeremiah. Nice to hear. Thanks again. We really appreciate it.